Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us for Quad Education's webinar on building your school list. I'm Nadine Evans, and I'm joined tonight by our two fantastic panelists that I'll introduce in just a few moments. But to start with, I just wanted to share a little bit about Quad Education for those of you who don't know us already. So Quad is a college admissions consulting firm with over 15 years of experience helping students realize their dreams of attending the country's top institutions. Our mission is to make higher education more accessible for students and empower them to take charge of their college journeys. We work with students from grade 6 through to 12, helping them differentiate their profiles in advance and prepare them for college. So from school selection to application crafting to interviews and beyond, we're sort of there with you for every step of your journey. So just a few quick housekeeping items before we jump in. So throughout the presentation, please feel free to pop your questions into the little Q&A box. So we'll be sure to leave time at the end of the presentation to go through as many questions as we can. And as well, this webinar is going to be recorded, and we'll be sharing a link to the recording after the webinar so you can reference this presentation at a later date. So don't feel that you have to kind of note everything down. You will be able to reference this a little bit later. Okay, perfect. All right, so let's go through the agenda then. So we are going to start with introductions. So I introduced myself, and we'll get to our panelists in a moment here. We'll go through understanding your goals and your needs, factors to consider as you build a customized list, ensuring your list is balanced. We'll go through how to build your school list, tips to narrow down your options, and then lastly, we'll finish with the Q&A. So tonight we have our two wonderful panelists, as I mentioned, Jennifer and Eric. Would you guys like to introduce yourselves?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening. We're excited to discuss this topic with you. It's super important, no matter whether you're a junior or a middle schooler who's thinking about this ahead of schedule. So my name is Jennifer, and I've been with Quad for several years now, helping students get into their dream institutions. And prior to that work, was a college guidance director in a private secondary school in my home state of Maryland, and directed study abroad programs throughout the U.S., schools like WashU and St. Louis and elsewhere, as a majority of my career helping undergraduates find their best fit universities abroad. I got my undergraduate degree in English and East Asian Studies from Harvard University, where I served as alumni interviewer for many, many years, and got my graduate degree abroad in Tokyo, Japan.
Wonderful.
Hi, everyone.
Thanks for that introduction.
Thanks for dropping in tonight. My name's Eric. I'm also an admissions counselor for Quad. Currently, I'm a graduate student, so I'm knee-deep in all of the admissions things that you guys have all had to go through too, or are having to go through too. I did my bachelor's degree in philosophy. I did my master's degree in philosophy as well. I'm doing a PhD and another master's, one in philosophy, one in theoretical physics. And both my advisors work in UIC's Institute for Quantum Theory at the Extremes. So we study the very hot, cold, dense, fast, and like conceptual problems related to those. And I've also spent the majority of my time working in between undergrad and my in graduate school, tutoring and also doing admissions consulting. So this is I'm a few years into doing this now. And yeah, that's my story. That's what I've been doing.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you both. Thank you both for joining us, and thanks for those introductions. So let's start off by talking about understanding your needs and goals.
Absolutely. So more than half of the process of building your college list involves understanding yourself. And what is really important to you is going to be a very significant driver in the schools that are going to be a good fit for you. And so rather than ask the question, what is XYZ school looking for? The questions that we want you to start with are, what am I looking for? What's important to me? What are my main priorities for my undergraduate years, whether it's a college, a smaller campus environment, or a university, a larger, mid-size, or very large institution. You're going to need to think about, what kind of learning environment do I really thrive in? What kind of residential area do I enjoy being in? Maybe you're someone who's always been in either a suburban or a rural location, and you'd love to try out what it's like to be in a larger, more urban environment, or vice versa. So it's very important to think about factors like that, and also what your values and core principles are, so that you can make sure that you're choosing an institution that's going to have a good fit and alignment with those values. We want you to take time to think about, what are your individual strengths, what are your weaknesses, where can you build up in the months or years ahead before you're engaged in the application process, and that will really help you clarify what you're looking for in your college experience.
Okay, so there's lots of considerations you want to take into account when you are building your list of colleges that you want to apply for. For a lot of people, the main focus is on academics. A lot of times that is kind of what people are thinking when they get into college applications is, what are my best ranked schools? Which ones are going to have the best academic ranking and things like that. But of course, going to college, you want to consider each college holistically. So there are a number of factors that kind of go into that. One of those is academics, of course. So if you are, for example, thinking that there is something in particular you want to study, a great thing to do is to look at that college's program for that thing you want to study. Also, what the faculty is like there. This is all information that you can find online and use to determine what it might be like to go to that college. Extracurriculars are a big one. If you do any sports, for example, when I was applying to my undergraduate, I was swimming. I was really interested in swimming. And so that was a big consideration for me when I was applying to bachelor's programs. And so that's great to look into programs that they have too for extracurriculars you want to do. Also personal considerations, and this includes a lot of things. Personal considerations include a lot of things. What city you want to live in, what the atmosphere is like on campus, whether or not there's clubs, other extracurriculars. A lot of the friends I've met in college and the vast majority of the amount of time you spend in college is spent around a lot of it is spent around other people, whether that's in class or doing extracurriculars. What it's like living there, that's a good thing to look into. What the atmosphere on campus is like, what the student body is like, as well as different resources. Like those can include, health services, mental health resources, all of those things. Here it has dining, housing plans listed. Those are all things you can look into and factors you can consider when you're trying to figure out where you want to apply to.
And then, of course, while you're looking at the next several years of your academic and personal growth, you also want to keep in mind the long-term aspect of where is this going to take you and how is it going to position you for where you want to go. For example, you might be looking to work right after you graduate from undergraduate. Your parents might be very excited about that idea. And you want to make sure that there is a robust career and internship support and advising at whatever schools you're looking at, so that you can begin to do that exploration early on in your academic career and graduate job ready with offers in hand and be ready to go. Maybe there are particular specialized concentrations or an aspect of a STEM field that's very interesting to you, that's a little bit niche. And so with your counselor, we're going to be really digging down into the offerings of each academic department and coming up with a tailor-made plan for you. And there's going to be different institutions that specialize in that area that are a particularly great fit for you. And then your college list would focus in on those kinds of opportunities. Maybe you're tracking for graduate school, whether it's a professional graduate program or an academic degree program, either a master's or a PhD. And you want to be very sure that your mentors in the department that you're studying in are going to have great connections and prepare you well to do further graduate research, which it's a focus of many institutions, Ivy Plus schools, Ivy League, but many institutions have this focus now on undergraduate research opportunities. And so it would be a great idea if you're planning for PhD work after undergraduate, it would be a great idea that you are able to do that kind of research during your undergraduate years. Similarly, if you're looking for medical or law or business school to be what you're doing after graduation, you want to make sure that the school has a very robust track record of placement, not just into any program, but to students' top programs, so that you know that you're reasonably well assured that you'll get where you want to go as well.
Perfect. Okay, let's go into some factors to consider as you build a customized list.
Okay, so the first factor you want to consider is the location and the environment. This is huge. I don't think I realized this when I was first applying for undergraduate institutions. This will play a huge factor in your college experience, where it is. So whether or not you prefer city life, or whether you like having nature or something like that nearby, a lot of times it helps to kind of look at your hobbies. Do you prefer spending time outside? Well, then if you move up north, that you should know that there's going to be a long period of winter and you're not going to be able to do that. And so a lot of people might not think about those things right away, but you definitely want to see what things like the weather is like, the surrounding area is like, whether or not you're going abroad. That's a big consideration. It can be hard to adjust if you go abroad. So it always helps to research into factors like that. Also traveling home. If you do decide to travel home, if that's if you go abroad and you need to go back to wherever you're from, obviously there will be considerations that come with that too, like cost of flights and traveling and things like that. And so those are all things to consider.
And it can also, and with regard to the location, it can also be great to think about where do you want to spend your career afterwards. If you know already that you're very interested in being on one coast or the other, and that can also be a useful part of which location you're planning on attending school in. Now with academics, we want you to be thinking about, not just, okay, they offer biology, I can go be a biology major, or I'm interested in economics, so off I go to do economics. But really digging into the academic offerings through looking at the curriculum. The curriculum is your 4-year roadmap to what you're going to be studying. It's going to define quite a bit of your academic experience, and it's very important that you have a good, solid understanding of exactly what you'll be doing, not just for your major, but also all of the other graduation requirements that the school expects you to complete in order to receive your degree. So you want to have a very good holistic understanding of all of that, and make sure that there's also maybe some flexibility. You might be like me, you might not have a very clear idea of exactly what you want to study, and it might be an evolving process as you go through your undergraduate journey. I like to joke that at one point my academic advisor was like, no more major changes. You need to focus on graduation. You're good. You've studied a lot of different things, and now it's time to launch, really, shift gears into thinking about life beyond school. It's great that you enjoy it, but let's go. And so you do want to have this flexibility, perhaps, if that's the path you're on, where okay, I might go in this direction or this direction or this direction. And it's important to me that the school that I'm looking at is going to have good options for me in any of these fields, because I'm as yet still deciding what I want to focus in on my academics. And then also with this, it's very important to understand what the teaching, how undergraduate teaching is valued, especially at a larger institution where it can be possible, not always, but it can be possible, that faculty are incentivized to work more at the graduate level, and TAs are really doing a majority of the teaching for undergraduate students. So if that's something that is important to you and you really want to get to know your professors well, you want to ask those questions and do your research in those areas as you're learning about different schools.
Well, sorry, let me go ahead and add to that too. This is one huge thing I didn't realize when I was applying for colleges, is that you can go to almost any university's website and see their course catalog. Mm-hmm. Right? As you know, in high school, there's generally not too many courses unless you go to like a really big high school that offers lots of courses. And so you kind of take what you have to take, and there's some electives there too. And then you go off to college. But in college, you have a whole bunch of different departments, and they have all their courses listed out, and usually they have everything they cover in those courses listed out. And so if you're like, hey, I'm interested in computer science or something, and but I'm not sure what that entails, what studying that in college entails, you can go on their website and you can look at their courses, and you can go find things like syllabi that show what the textbooks you use are, what you're literally everything you're doing in the courses. And that's great if you have extra time to just sit and look through those. It can give you so much information. It's limitless. You can go look at pretty much everything they do. And that gives you lots of insight into what to expect academically. Okay, so this kind of goes into the other holistic factors that we were talking about earlier, campus culture and community. One thing you can consider is the diversity of the campus that you're going to. So, diversity can include lots of different things. It can include the actual composition of the student body, whether or not that's diverse. What the number of different clubs there are. You can see the different student organizations, the different student clubs, the different kinds of events that they host, different things like that. Those are all great things to consider when you're looking for universities. It is important, I will say it is important to, wherever you go, you won't always be able to achieve this, but feeling like you're at home is great. So if you have certain things that you're used to, it can be very nice if you go off to college, if you can find those same things, join a club where they do those same things, and then be a part, make a point of being part of that club. It's great for your mental health. It's great for your productivity in school. And so, yeah, it's great to research those things as well when you're trying to figure out what colleges you want to apply to.
And then there's, of course, the financial considerations. It's incredibly important that you are confident that you can afford not just the first year of your undergraduate education, but that you can also afford all 4 years of your undergraduate education. As I worked with different students over the years when I was working in higher education, campus-based, it was heartbreaking to see students who had great promise and who had, so much invested in their academic journeys, but they just weren't able financially to continue with their education. Now, unforeseen things are going to happen. There's a volatility in certain sectors, and there, you can't predict the future, but you do want to think that through with whomever is helping fund your educational journey, and ensure that you do have a good game plan for that. Now, there's going to be, depending on the institution, there can be grants and scholarships that are offered. Some of those are merit-based for academic or other achievements. Some of those would be need-based because your family demonstrates a certain level of financial need. And it kind of goes without saying, but the more competitive institutions are not under a huge amount of incentive to give out large grants and scholarships. So you need to be thinking carefully as you're creating your list. You might have some dream schools and some reach schools that are right up there at the top of competitiveness and selectivity. And there might be others that are a great fit for you. And they are, because of where they are in the rankings, they have sort of more of an emphasis on giving out support in these different kinds of areas. Now, financial need is really, it's a different story. I shouldn't conflate the two. Any institution is going to have their own philosophy on how much financial need they're committed to meeting that families demonstrate. And I went through school on financial aid. Our opinion of what we could afford was always very different from what the school said we could afford. And so I had loans that carried with me, and that was a commitment that I made into my education as well as work study. So it's just important to kind of have a whole picture of how are we going to get through this process successfully, because the worst case scenario is that you start at a four-year institution and you're not able to finish for financial reasons that, if there was more thought in the beginning, you might have seen that coming. So just be very careful to analyze that. There is something called a net price calculator that is available that you can look at the whole cost of attending and kind of do that research and make sure that it's going to work for you.
Okay, reputation and rankings. This is the last little factor on this list that we have. So here's basically what I want to say about this is, there's kind of this global list of rankings for universities, right? As you have, a bunch of maybe you have number one and then you have a few tied for number two, and it kind of goes down the list. I think what I want to point out is that depending on what you want your enterprise to be in college, whether you're considering going to med school or whether you're considering on going to graduate school in some research area, or whether you just you want to get your bachelor's degree and then get out, different colleges are going to be better at different things, right? As there's a global ranking, but this is very, very coarse grained. Depending on what thing you are considering, you're going to have different colleges that are better than the others. So there is no one single ranking that determines, hey, this college is better than this other one for you. There are very loose criteria that are generally used to put together rankings, but like I said, for the most part, you want to consider the things that have already been mentioned here. It's like, okay, I'm interested in medicine. What is their medical faculty like? Am I going to take a 100 level class with a well-known researcher in medicine, be able to come say hi to them, have them get to know me, and then you make connections that way. Those are really important things to consider. I think a lot of times that goes hand in hand with rankings. But I think my main advice is the ranking is going to go along with things that, the particular things that you want to do. So yeah, finally, consider your ranking for whatever it is you want to do. And then also you want to consider whether it aligns with your goals and values and the other criteria we've discussed here, whether or not the location is a good fit for you, finances are a good fit for you, so on and so forth.
Wonderful. And now we want to move into kind of evaluating and making sure that your list is balanced. So there's a couple of factors that we've been talking about throughout our presentation this evening. I'm going to go to 2, 3, and 4 kind of to summarize, where you're looking at various types of schools. Is it important to you to be in a smaller campus environment? And that's where you're going to thrive. You're going to know others and be known by most of the campus community. Or is a mid-size or a larger institution better suited for you because of the facilities that might be offered, because of the major that you're interested in, because of the location, finances, whatever. So it's important to look through all of those different types of institutions and choose one that's going to be a good fit for you. We mentioned geographic diversity and looking at different locations, not just regions in the US. And I work with students who want to study in the UK and Australia every year. on their applications as well. So, are you looking internationally? Are you looking at different regions in the US or different kinds of settings in regions? And so you might know that I want to be near a city, but not in a city. So your school list is going to balance and reflect that goal. You're going to have a lot of suburban kinds of environments, and you might toss in a rural or an urban one as well, but you've kind of narrowed that down. So, and then thinking about different programs and the strengths and the sizes of those programs is also very important in this. Each student, as I work with them, usually has some preferences in each of these second, third, and fourth areas. And so what we do is kind of scan across at a range of different institutions and look for schools that have those qualities, and then come back to number one, where we have this safety, match, and reach school exercise, looking at an applicant's academic performance, looking at standardized testing scores, looking at extracurricular involvements and leadership to know really, research achievements, competition wins, all these kinds of things go into determining whether a school is a safety match or reach for an individual student. Grades are not everything, but grades are very important. Standardized testing depends on the school. So, there's very highly variable approaches to that, from the UC system being test blind to now Yale and Dartmouth becoming test mandatory, and everything in between being some version of test optional or test required. Like, it's just important to be on top of those emerging developments and tracking that. But what we want to have you emerge from this planning process with is a range of schools that reflect some schools you just I got to take my shot. I'm going to apply. I'm going to see what happens. Maybe I won't get in, but I'm still going to do it. It's absolutely perfect that you have a couple of those schools. It's not a great idea that your whole list is those schools. So you want to have a couple of those schools, some reach institutions, some match schools that you feel like, and your counselor feels like, is going to be a reasonable fit for you and a good likelihood of admission, plus the opportunity to have a couple of schools where you're pretty sure you're going to get in, so that you just sleep well at night, and know that you might get an early admit from one of those schools and go, okay, I've got my first school admit, and now I can go into the rest of the waiting game after you've got your applications turned in.
All right, so the next thing we're going to cover is how to build this list of schools that you want to apply to. So the first step is, you consider your different options, you consider the different factors we've discussed here, and, you do a little bit of research online, and you'll have a big cluster of universities pop up, and you're kind of thinking like, okay, well, these ones have, maybe I'm a little bit interested in this subject, that, these schools look like they have a really good program for this. Maybe I'm interested in this subject. These schools look like they have a really good program for that. A lot of them have both. So you get maybe 15 to 20 colleges down that you are interested in, for all the factors we've discussed. Okay, then you can use whatever tools are at your disposal, whether that's online tools, or we offer consulting services and things like that too. And then you want to take those schools that you're interested in and research them thoroughly. So this includes, again, all the factors we've discussed here. Like I said earlier, I encourage all of you to look at course listings and syllabi. That is very, very informative, and there's lots of information there. Really, really research what you're going to be doing there, all the clubs and things like that you're going to be doing. Naturally, this is going to weed some of these colleges out, probably for you, as you're going to see things and be like, oh, I'm not really feeling this, or things like that. And then, that's going to adjust the list a little bit. And then step 3 is to narrow them down. So that, you're going to take your broad amount of choices and you're going to narrow them down. Usually people will apply somewhere in the dozens. Depending on how particular they are about getting into colleges, what kind of colleges they're applying for. It's good to have a list of maybe, low teens to mid teens, no more, but you should shoot for no more than 20 usually.
And then now we're going to talk a little bit more in detail about how you can narrow down your options. Maybe you start with, twice as many schools as you're going to apply to. And how are you going to get to your ideal list of 7 to 10 to 12 to 15 schools? You want to think about what do you absolutely need to have in your undergraduate experience, major, size of the institution. Maybe athletics is very important to you, either to have a vibrant athletic team that you're going to be cheering on, or to have a range of sports that are available to you as an athlete. So you want to be very carefully looking at that. And then just think about, maybe the architectural style of the buildings, or whether they have a minor in film studies or not, or whatever it might be for you, can just be an add-on that you can say, that would be nice if that's a part of my 4-year degree plan. And if it's not, that's going to be just fine too. That way that you're going to be able to really focus in on the main aspects and criteria that are most important to you. And then you dive into gathering your information. There are a lot of guidebooks, and like online resource guides, school websites. You can binge watch YouTube channels, whatever is going to help you gain some information. And definitely since COVID hit and schools had to go all into online instruction and in-person tours were suspended, colleges and universities spent a lot of time and effort devoting resources to virtual tours and virtual information sessions and ways to communicate what their campus offers to students around the country and around the world, since travel wasn't a possibility. So all of those resources are still out there, and you can get a lot of information and a good sense of a place by spending 45 minutes to an hour in an information session online and doing some research that way.
Okay, another option or another strategy to narrow down your options is to look for guidance. This can be a little bit tricky sometimes if you're in high school, because a lot of times college can kind of seem like this unfamiliar world where there's different people than there are in high school, and it's sometimes it's hard to get a connection there. A good place to start is with your counselor, maybe at school if you have a counselor, an academic counselor. You can always talk to them. They should be able to offer you some information about the colleges you're considering. Another thing is, and I say this because almost nobody does this, but it's very useful, is you can, again, look at faculty for departments or look at their graduate students. Their information will probably be on the website, and you can always shoot them an email if you have a specific question. They might not answer. Sometimes they don't even answer to undergraduates, but you have nothing to lose from that. And engagement with TAs and professors in general is already pretty, I don't want to speak across the board, but I've bounced around to different universities, and in general, it can be underutilized. And so reaching out to these people, they might not be as swamped with student requests as you might think. And so they might be receptive to you sending an email to one of them with a specific question. That's another option if you can get a hold of current students or faculty like that. The final piece of advice, or well, not final piece of advice, but another piece of advice is, be open to trying new things or be open to considering new options, right? I mean, almost everybody changes at least once what they want to do. And, when they go to college, is a lot of times you'll enter with some idea, sometimes not. And then you'll change. A lot of times it's a few times you'll change. For a lot of students, it can be a few times. Some students don't, that's okay. Some students change more times than that, that's okay. But it is nice to have a bigger picture perspective there when you're saying, okay, I want to go here. There's a chance I might change. So let me be open-minded about the things I'm interested in, and that's going to help you include or exclude more options.
Perfect. Wonderful. Well, thank you both for sharing all of those insights. So we've arrived at the Q&A session now. So if anyone has any questions, please do pop them into the Q&A chat box. And I see we have one here. So when should students start building their school list?
When should students start building their school list? You can start as early as you like. That's my advice is, you can, if you're a junior or a sophomore, I mean, students know at different times. Students a lot of times start thinking about college at different times. I'd say it's never too early to start, start looking into things. Like I said, courses are a huge one. You can look into what courses they are, see if anything piques your interest, right? I'd say it's never too early to start. I mean, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And at the same time, realistically, when you have the list coming in your sophomore year, a couple of ideas, that you want to have represented in your list, then we also, really like to see the data that's going to support that. And that just simply isn't going to be there. You're not going to have your SAT and ACT scores perfected for most students until beginning of the junior year, end of the sophomore year for very high achieving students. So it is important to kind of just have a flexible mindset as you're going through it. You may do some research on schools like we've been talking about, and the school you thought you always wanted to go to, it ends up not being what you want 2 years down the road. And visits can be pretty decisive when you're able to do that. And we certainly advise, if you're going to be engaging in the early decision rounds, either 1 or 2, where you're basically contractually obligated to attend an institution if you're accepted there, really want to get to those institutions. Because I've had students that I'm working with think, oh, I'm definitely going to ED1 to this institution. And we have the conversation about the importance of the visit and not the empty building tour summer thing, but get there when students are there and really get a sense and a feel for the campus. And they'll go and visit and they'll come back and say, okay, we need a different plan. I'm so glad I went because this and this and this, it just wasn't for me. So kind of going back to the very beginning of our presentation, knowing yourself and knowing what's important to you is going to be a really significant driver in this. And you're going to change over time too, as you grow and develop and try new experiences academically and extracurricularly.
Wonderful. Okay, we have another question here. And I know we kind of touched base on this a little bit, but how can we get a sense of school culture or social setting apart from a campus visit? So any other kind of tips for how to kind of gauge that experience or that environment?
Yeah, I mean, I'd hate to direct you to the internet because the internet can be full of, things that aren't necessarily true. But a lot of colleges and organizations at colleges will have websites. There will be things like blogs. Reddit is a great place where I know that's Reddit's usually used as a kind of a resource for sharing random stuff. But most universities have a subreddit where people just ask questions and then current students will answer those questions. And so it's a little bit of a weird place to direct you to, but I think actually it can be incredibly useful. Just if you want to see what people are talking about, what kinds of things are going on at a college. You can look at their Reddit page, but there's a lot of, you can Google different organizations, different clubs, and you will be able to find web pages where they're discussing things, activities that they're doing.
Mm-hmm. Great, wonderful. Okay, and here's another question. So how can you decide between a smaller school versus a larger school?
That's a great question. I think it's really fantastic if you can look right around where you live. And it might not be schools that you're planning to attend, but you can visit a campus that's a smaller school, visit a campus that's a larger school, and maybe even do some class visits, treat it as a learning opportunity to explore the type of institution. And what does it feel like to be at a very large campus where you might even have to take a shuttle bus from here to there? or at least you're going to have a very long walk, but you're always surrounded by activity. There's tons of stuff going on. And how does that kind of feel to you? Does it feel overwhelming or does it feel exciting? And just take some notes mentally, or however you take notes, and kind of store those up so that you know what direction to head in. I know that I'm a STEM major, and working in an environment where there are lots of really great lab spaces available to me, super important. So then you're going to kind of hone in on that area. Or if you're heading in the performing arts direction, likewise, that you're going to be looking at what is available to you as an aspiring theater arts major or musician or whatever it might be. So you can learn a lot about where you might want to focus and what directions you might want to head in by looking at opportunities that are right around you locally.
Wonderful. Okay, great. And then another question is, how many schools should I apply to? And I know we kind of said, no more than 20, but is there sort of a magic number that students should aim for?
I don't know about a magic number per se. Most of my students get exhausted after 15, unless it's applications that don't have any extra essays that need to be written. I've had some students be like, I'm going to max out the Common App 20 spaces, and I'm going to need to do coalition, and then they just run out of steam. So more is not always more. Every year you read about the student that got accepted to, 48 or 96 schools or whatever. You need to get accepted to one. If that's your ED1 or ED2 or REA choice, that's great. Off you go. If it's not, it would be lovely if you had a range of schools to choose from. That's our goal as consultants when we're working with our students, to set you up for success that way. But reasonably, 10 to 15 is kind of an ideal range, in my opinion.
Another thing too is it'll vary based on, if you're one of those people who are kind of like, well, I need to get into an Ivy League or something like that, then if you have a lower chance of admission, which is, again, a number that you can access online, is what is the admission rate of this university. In order to get the desired result, naturally, you're going to have to apply more places, right? Because it's just the likelihood that you'll get into one of the places you want is lower. So that means you're going to have to, try more places to go, right? So that's another factor to consider too, with the amount of applications that you put in. Graduate school applications are very, very, very low rate across the board. And so they always say, like, just throw them out there, right? Just get a whole bunch out there. You can use the same thinking if you're applying to, undergraduate institutions with low admission rates.
Great. And how should students think about adding schools to their list that are in-state versus out-of-state?
In-state schools are wonderful options, whether they're private or public. It's often the case with my students that they want to have that option, if not that focus. Sometimes there's like a regional focus for a variety of reasons. Either they know that they want to work in the area after they're graduating, so it makes all the sense in the world to base there, or there's family reasons for being close by, etc. So, looking at getting into the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign as an in-state student versus an out-of-state student, or UT Austin in-state versus out-state, you're going to have dramatically higher odds of admission for an in-state student, because those schools are designed to support residents and families are paying taxes to support them, etc. So it can make a lot of sense for you to consider that as part of how you build your college list.
Wonderful. Okay, well, great. Well, thank you everyone for joining us, and thank you to our panelists for all of those amazing insights. I noticed a couple of questions in the chat box specific to some different topics, things like scholarships. For any questions that we weren't able to get to, please feel free to reach out to us. We would love to connect with you. You can go to our website at quadeducationgroup.com, and you can schedule a free consultation to speak with one of our admissions experts. And again, this webinar will be recorded, so you will be provided with a link very shortly. So keep an eye out for that. And thank you again, everyone, for being here with us. It was wonderful to connect, and I hope everyone has a wonderful evening.